Why am I here? I'll tell you why I'm here. First off, the White House siege is actually known as Reoccupy. It's like Occupy Wall Street, the sequel, version 2.0, the reboot. But that being said, I did Occupy 9 years ago, and S17, September 17th, is the 9-year anniversary of the day that Occupy Wall Street began in Zuccotti Park in Manhattan. So there's that reason. But beyond that, and I'm really proud to be a part of that, by the way, but beyond that, it has to do with human rights on every level. We're talking about women. We're talking about people of color. We're talking about trans. We're talking about every race, every creed, every human being on the planet being protected by everybody. And the people that are not down with that are the ones we're here to confront. Because it's very clear there is a force at work in this world that is not about equal human rights. And so it allows police brutality, it allows endless wars, it allows racism, and it allows all of this division. And that's what we're here to confront. That's what we're here to stand up against and for unity, for peace and civility in a time when people are killing each other in the streets. That's why I'm here. Here we are at Franklin Square, Washington, D.C. As you can see, completely fenced off. The monument of John Barry, the first U.S. Naval Commissioned Officer, fenced off because of the BLM protests. They don't want anybody defacing this monument. But what's interesting is that there's no graffiti whatsoever, because John Barry was an Irishman who didn't own slaves. So they didn't feel the need to hit this monument, but they felt the need to fence it off anyway.
I'll do the true or false question for you. In the United States of America, all registered voters vote.
Real democracy is like, it's like a story of fucking unicorns and GOT, Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones. Remember the old ways? Remember how it used to be?
I can guarantee you that if we start counting our votes in accord with the way the Declaration set it up, over 98% of our politicians in elected office vanished.
Yeah, 2011, this is where it happened. Very important event. People came together to let their voices be known that, we need justice.
Here we are at Lafayette Square. As you can see, the gate is currently closed. I think I know why, because it's September 17th. It says 17 is Constitution Day. It's the birthday of Occupy. We are standing outside the Unitarian Universalist National Memorial Church in Washington, D.C. on 16th Street. This place is magical. 13 years ago, with a group of my friends from Florida, we came here in a protest against George Bush in the Iraq War, and they housed us. We stayed inside this tower. I actually slept inside this tower. And what makes it so incredibly magical is that on that night, as we came outside to enjoy the fresh air, we discovered the House of the Temple across the street. So what we did that morning after, I came outside that night as we stayed at this church, we discovered the temple. And so the next morning, as we were going to a protest that we had to go around the White House for, which is just down the street, take a look, this is 16th Street. So the White House is all the way down there, that's south, right? We're in the midst of a very large design in the streets of Washington, D.C. This temple sits in what would be the eye of a giant pyramid built into the streets of Washington, D.C. So as we went to the protest that day, we're walking down right through here, and my friends were like, what were you talking about, the temple? And I'm like, this temple, guys. This is the temple. If you've ever read Dan Brown's books, this temple is featured in the book at 1733 16th Street. 17 plus 16 equals 33. What is 33? But a master mason. This is the Federal Reserve, primary bank of the United States. Of course, it's not federal. It's actually a private conglomerate of Wall Street banks. So, when I say that there's a $27 trillion national debt, this entity is complicit in that debt. In 1913, the Federal Reserve created the Federal Income Tax and the Federal Reserve Act in 1913, which basically created an income tax that went directly into them. And they've been walking away with it ever since.
This is a private conglomerate, not a federal entity, and it is very largely responsible for the horrific financial mismanagement that we are currently seeing from the U.S. government today.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the U.S. Department of Treasury. What's important to know about the U.S. Department of Treasury is it is run by a man named Steve Mnuchin. Steve Mnuchin, of course, worked for Goldman Sachs, basically still does. And so, of course, the U.S. Department of Treasury then just becomes a funnel point for Wall Street. Mr. Steve Mnuchin has done so much to fill the pockets of the 1%, to ignore the needs of the people, and that's exactly why Donald Trump put him in there. While every monument in Washington, D.C. should be a monument to ending war, it really isn't. But this one is. This is the Vietnam War Memorial with over 50,000 names carved into the stone. And if that isn't a reminder that the endless war of the 20th century never really ended, then nothing is. Because these might as well be the names of people from COVID, the names from 9/11, or the Iraq War, the Afghanistan War. Fill in the blank. All those wars don't have a wall. So it has to represent all of these things. If any monument in Washington, D.C. is a testament to the failures and mismanagement of the Democratic and Republican parties, it's this one. These names are proof that the government of this country embroils itself in wars it shouldn't be fighting and kills soldiers and civilians it shouldn't be killing. Here we are at the Washington Monument. Now, why is this important? Because I'm here to tell the story, the true history. George Washington was not the first American president as many people think that he was. In fact, he was the 15th American president. Now, how does that work? Well, there were 14 American presidents in the convention before Washington. But he's considered the first because he drafted the Constitution with the Freemasons, and so they established him as what is now known to be the first president. And on top of that, even more importantly, relevant to this day and time, is the fact that he owned slaves. He owned slaves. The first president of the United States owned slaves, and so did many of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. So it is worth noting that while these people wrote into the Constitution these liberties for all people, it would seem, in fact, what they did was oppress not only blacks, but also women and also natives. And by doing so, not guarantee the liberties that they claim to really stand for. So it's important that we come here to tell the true story and to really analyze the history for what it is. Here we are at the Lincoln Memorial. Why are we here? For a lot of reasons. Everybody thinks that this man freed the slaves, but we have to read the 13th Amendment very closely, because it's in that 13th Amendment that we discover that, in fact, the exception clause makes it okay for slavery to still exist in the United States as the legal system, being duly convicted by a court of law.
There's very little people who didn't own any slaves. You can like just, say you're all guilty, it's all slaves. Sure,
Yeah.
But you can, even within the thing of owning slaves, you can see about where they wanted to stand.
The sweeping generalizations of entire populations of people, like all white people own slaves, or even all black people were slaves, which is not even true.
Right.
So there's really this sense of let's get to the truth and out of these absolutes and extremes. And I think the only way to really do that, as I'm seeing it, is to come to these sites and really take a look and re-examine the history, ask the questions, and really take a look again. This man did own slaves, and that's not something to condone. And there is an entire world of people that own slaves, an entire mindset of people that think it's okay, and still to this day think it's okay, that human slavery is still okay, that races are more superior to others, which is absolutely not the case. So it feels like a lost cause, like to try and unite, actually be the United States again, which is like, oh my God.
It's in the name, right?
It's in the damn name, folks. Like, live it up, be the truth of that. That means you gotta evolve your mentality. Like, you gotta stop thinking in the blues and reds and the blacks and whites, because the more that we just do this thing, we just fall farther and farther away from the vision.
You can have all that data in your head, but you want to separate yourself from everybody else. Do your own research. Have all the information be out there. Don't dictate to people how they should learn. Have everybody who wants to really think for themselves, which we lost, come down, do your research, and speak to somebody else and just have an open mind. And I'm going to hear things I don't agree with, and you're going to hear things you don't agree with, and we're going to be okay with that. And we're going to say, hey, that does make sense, or hey, that doesn't make sense, and we're not going to just fall over. It's going to be amazing. That's, I think, what will really make a difference.
For all the people that are like scared to protest or scared to dissent now, like we're here to show them, wait, the forum is not dead. The forum is still alive. Like we are still here as Americans. We still care. Like I don't care brown, black, white, yellow, red. I do not care. I don't care what religion. I don't care where you're from. I'm here to establish, like, I feel a true uniting position that steps away from what I call this false duality. America is closed for construction. I come in here and I'm like, yo, this is like a metaphor for us right now. We are close to construction. As you can see, the monument of Andrew Jackson, fenced off and protected. And Lafayette Square has been the site of many protests throughout history. And as we've been planning, S-17 2020, the White House siege right here in Lafayette Square, in the shadow of the White House.
Make sure that you're informed. So if you're gonna vote by mail on the day of the election, get there at friggin' 6 a.m. to be in line. Don't wait till 3:30 and you might not get in the door and it's already, then it's 5:01 and guess who gets fucked again? We the people.
Take down the KKK, right? That's step number one. War on terror, out. War on drugs, out. All these bogus policies that have made us bankrupt and divided everyone, out. The prison industrial complex on the fucking chopping block.
What are you gonna do with Republican
Pharmaceutical
Democrats?
industrial complex on the chopping block.
Yes.
No mandatory vaccines. No more qualified immunity for vaccine companies. No more of this qualified immunity for police officers. Exactly. No more qualified immunity, period, right?
Can you explain to me why police officers have qualified immunity when our U.S. soldiers, who are actually fucking heroes fighting in wars overseas, don't have qualified immunity, have a stricter rule of engagement, and have more penalties for doing anything that like these people do on a regular basis?
Yeah.
Where are we standing for our constitutional actual rights as citizens? The right wing is the first person to explain the importance of the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, Third Amendment, the Fourth Amendment. But no matter what, when you look at it, they're pro-establishment, they're pro-control, they're pro-authority. As soon as we saw some sort of rising up against the control apparatus that we have presented against us, where not only police officers, but federal officers, not only that, but our politicians are all against American interests. How can we support that in any way? Period. It's the First Amendment. The right to a free press, the right to free speech, the right to peacefully assemble. Where are my constitutionalists? Why are we not here in support?
Right here.
God bless you. Because they're gonna fuck us out of 2020. We'll fix this shit in 4 years. Hang tight, America.
Mr. Donald Trump, can you hear me? We have something to say to you. There's a lot happening in this country. What you do hurts the people of this country.